You can just feel it, man. Football is finally back, and this offseason is about to get real. No more rumors. No more what-ifs. Now we actually get to see who's showing up hungry, who's taking control of this team, and who's ready to make a serious jump this season. And honestly, there are a few guys on this roster that could completely change the direction of this team if things click the right way. The energy around camp feels different this year, like something big might actually be building in Minnesota. If you're hyped for Vikings football, smash that like button and drop a big SKOL baby down in the comments so I know the real fans are here. Something inside the Minnesota Vikings facility is starting to shift, and for the first time this offseason, fans are finally about to get real answers. OTAs are officially here, and while most people around the league treat these workouts like glorified practice sessions, that is not the case in Minnesota. Not this year, not with the pressure surrounding this roster, not with the expectations building inside that locker room, and definitely not with the quarterback situation that is about to dominate every conversation across Vikings territory for the next several months. Because now, for the first time, the competition between Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy becomes real. Up until this point, fans could dream, speculate, debate online, and convince themselves of whatever version of the future they wanted to believe. But once these OTA practices begin, reality starts setting in. Coaches start organizing reps. Offensive installs become more serious. Timing matters. Chemistry matters. Decision-making matters. And suddenly, the Vikings are no longer projecting potential. They are evaluating who gives them the best chance to win immediately. And according to everything coming out of this situation, Kyler Murray is expected to take the majority of the QB1 reps early in OTAs. That alone tells you exactly where this organization stands entering the summer. What makes this storyline fascinating is that Vikings fans are emotionally split right now. There is a large portion of the fan base desperately hoping J.J. McCarthy explodes this offseason and steals the job outright. Social media has been flooded with theories, predictions, and excitement surrounding McCarthy becoming the future face of the franchise. But inside the building, the Vikings appear to be approaching this with a much more grounded mindset. The reality is impossible to ignore. Last season was rough for McCarthy. Not just inconsistent. Rough. The criticism around his NFL transition became impossible to avoid because the production simply was not there. The belief internally seems to be that improvement is expected, especially considering he is still only 23 years old, but the Vikings are clearly not willing to hand him the offense based purely on upside or draft status. And honestly, that says something important about where this franchise believes it is right now. This is not a rebuilding football team anymore. Minnesota believes it can compete immediately. The front office believes the roster is ready. Brian Flores believes the defense is close to becoming one of the nastiest units in football. Kevin O'Connell believes the offensive weapons are elite. And when a franchise reaches that point mentally, patience at quarterback becomes a luxury coaches often refuse to gamble on. That is why these OTA reps matter so much. Every throw from Kyler Murray will be analyzed. Every completion from McCarthy will create headlines. Every practice report coming out of Egan is going to send fans into complete chaos. But the truth is, the coaching staff likely already knows exactly what they want to see. They want command. They want consistency. They want leadership. And maybe most importantly, they want someone capable of maximizing what suddenly looks like one of the most dangerous offensive rosters in the NFC. Because look at the weapons this team now has. Justin Jefferson remains the centerpiece of everything offensively. Still the best wide receiver in football. Still capable of destroying defensive game plans by himself. But now you pair him with Jordan Addison and Jawan Jennings, and suddenly defensive coordinators have problems everywhere. And quietly, one player the Vikings are watching closely during OTAs is Ty Felton. The Vikings invested heavily in Felton, spending a third-round pick on him, but his rookie-year role barely scratched the surface of what the organization expected. Most of his impact came as a gunner, which is not what teams envision when using a top 100 draft selection on a receiver. Still, there is real intrigue surrounding him entering year 2. Internally, coaches reportedly love his route running and yards after catch ability. The problem is opportunity. It is incredibly difficult to crack meaningful snaps when you are buried behind Jefferson, Addison, and Jennings. But that is exactly why OTAs matter for Felton. The Vikings need to know whether he can become a reliable emergency starter if injuries hit this receiving core later in the year. And there is another rookie creating massive intrigue already inside Brian Flores' defense. Jay Gold might quietly become one of the most fascinating defensive experiments on this roster. Minnesota used the 51st overall pick on him because of his rare athletic profile. At 6'4", with elite versatility, Flores appears ready to move him all over the defense. Some inside the fan base believe he could evolve into an Andrew Van Ginkel-style hybrid defender. Others think he eventually replaces Blake Cashman. There are even discussions about using him as a massive nickel defender, capable of helping shut down the run while maintaining flexibility in coverage. But here is what stands out most. The Vikings reportedly want to slow play his development. That tells you they believe his ceiling is enormous. Flores does not rush players he views as long-term chess pieces. And Gold feels exactly like that type of project. A defensive weapon whose final form may not even be fully understood yet. At the same time, another OTA storyline could quietly determine how successful this offense becomes in 2026, the health of Christian Darrisaw. If Darrisaw truly returns fully healthy after the ACL and MCL injuries, this offensive line suddenly has a chance to become elite. Minnesota already believes highly in Brian O'Neill, who has consistently performed like a top-tier right tackle. The organization is hoping for major growth from Donovan Jackson after dealing with injury issues, and they made significant financial commitments elsewhere across the line as well. But Darrisaw is the entire key. If he looks explosive again during OTAs, optimism around this offense is going to skyrocket across Minnesota almost instantly. And honestly, this is only scratching the surface of the storylines exploding around the Vikings right now, because the defensive competitions, the breakout candidates, and the growing belief surrounding Dallas Turner could completely reshape expectations for this season. So before we continue into the next part, I want to know this from Vikings fans. Do you truly believe J.J. McCarthy still has a real shot to become the Week 1 starter over Kyler Murray? Or do you think the Vikings have already made their decision internally? Drop your opinion below, because this debate is about to take over the entire offseason. And if there is one player who could completely change the energy of this Vikings defense during OTAs, it might be Dallas Turner. Not because people are questioning his talent anymore. That part is already obvious. The flashes he showed during the second half of last season completely changed how people inside the organization view him. The explosiveness, the bend off the edge, the closing speed. It started looking exactly like the players scouts believed he could become coming out of college. But now comes the next evolution. This is no longer about potential. This is about ownership. The Vikings moved on from Jonathan Greenard, and now the expectation is that Dallas Turner walks into that building carrying himself like the alpha pass rusher of the future. Coaches want to see confidence. Teammates want to feel his presence. And Vikings fans are waiting to see if he truly embraces being the centerpiece of Brian Flores' pressure packages. What makes this even more dangerous for opposing offenses is the amount of depth Minnesota suddenly has on the defensive front. Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins is quietly becoming one of the most talked-about breakout candidates internally. Flores reportedly loves his physicality, length, and versatility. The Vikings believe their defensive line rotation could become a non-stop wave of fresh bodies attacking quarterbacks for 4 quarters straight. And that philosophy matters. Flores has made it clear he wants multiple defensive tackles he trusts every single week, not just one dominant player carrying the unit. That means competition during OTAs is going to be intense, especially for younger defenders trying to force their way into meaningful snaps before training camp even begins. Meanwhile, one of the sneakiest battles on this roster is happening in the secondary. The Vikings' safety room is entering a fascinating transition period. Josh Metellus remains the do-everything weapon in this defense and will likely continue playing nearly every snap imaginable. Flores uses him everywhere: linebacker, nickel, safety, even near the defensive line in certain packages. But behind him, the fight is wide open. Jay Ward, Theo Jackson, and Jacoby Thomas are all battling for major roles, and the Vikings clearly believe at least one of them can emerge as an impact starter. Jacoby Thomas especially feels like a classic Brian Flores-type player. Physical, violent, aggressive. The kind of defender who can change momentum with one hit across the middle of the field. The only question is whether he develops quickly enough mentally to earn full trust in Flores' complicated defensive system. And honestly, that is what makes these OTAs so important across the entire roster. This is not a team searching for identity anymore. This is a team trying to figure out whether it is ready to contend. The Vikings already have stars. They already have coaching. They already have explosive talent on both sides of the football. Now it becomes about chemistry, leadership, and whether these young players are truly ready to elevate the franchise into the next tier of NFC contenders. And the scary part for the rest of the league? There is still a feeling that this roster has not even peaked yet. So now, I want to hear from all the Vikings fans watching this. Which player are you most excited to watch during OTAs? Dallas Turner, J.J. McCarthy, Ty Felton, Jay Gold, or someone else completely? Drop your takes in the comments. Smash that like button and subscribe, because once OTA reports start coming out, things around the Minnesota Vikings are about to get very interesting. Go Vikings!